Howdy, Cecil. About to finish up planting?
Hey, George. Yeah, this is the last piece of land I got to plow and plant this year.
You know, Cecil, you ought to think about bringing that back 40 into production. Take a little bit of leveling and clearing. It'd be the smart thing to do.
I don't know. I have thought about that. Well, but if the price of beans is hold up, I might get back the cost of clearing it and planting it in a year or so. And then I might have a little money left to start paying the bank back for this new equipment I bought.
Sure you could. But you know, that area looks a mite wet. Might pay you to get in touch with the Corps of Engineers, find out if that's one of them wetlands.
Wetland? Hell, my daddy drained that piece of land 30 years ago. I can drive this heavy equipment over there any place and not have any trouble at all. But you know, it might not hurt anything. I'll give him a call.
Be a smart thing to do.
Sir, would you give me the telephone number of that Army Engineer District, New Orleans, their field office? You know the one. Okay, that's an easy number. I'll give them a call. The trouble I'm having here is that George thinks I ought to put that back 40 into production. Thinks it might be a wetland. You ever heard anything like that? Says I ought to call the Corps of Engineers. They can give me some advice on that. So I'm going to call them up.
So you see, if we determine that there's a positive indicator of hydric vegetation, soils, and hydrology, then we would have to conclude that this is a wetland and under our jurisdiction. Here, take a look at this.
Well, it seems to make sense. Why don't you show me what you got to do?
All right, let me get started here. Certainly is a positive indicator of the vegetation here, and I found that your soils are hydric. I can't find any indication of hydrology, Mr. Mays.
Well, I told you my daddy drained the place in 1950.
Well, normally I'd be able to tell you this wasn't a wetland and not under our jurisdiction, but Attorney General Civiletti decided that EPA had the final call, and since we're here in Terre Parish, Louisiana, and they've called this a special case area, you're going to have to check with EPA to verify this call.
What is an EPA? Wetlands are areas covered by water, and they have waterlogged soil. See right here? And then the Corps fellow said that since my daddy had drained the area legally, and there wasn't any indication of hydrology, it's not a wetland. But I had to check with you first.
Well, you see, Mr. Mays, the Corps has their way of doing things, and we have ours. Let me show you. I'm sure you understand now, Mr. Mays, that because the soils on your property are hydric, and because the vegetation that you've got growing there occurs on this list of plants that occur in wetlands, that your property is a wetland, regardless of whether there's any indications of hydrology. Therefore, if you're going to discharge fill on that property, you're going to have to get a permit first.
How do I get this permit?
Well, you know, I'm sure that the Army Corps of Engineers will be happy to help you with that, Mr. Mays. You just go and see them. Talk to that fellow that you spoke with before, and I'm sure he'll help you. He'll get you the application form. You know, but good luck, Mr. Mays. I'm sure everything will be fine.
I tell you, George, first this Corps engineer guy said it's not a wetland, and then this EPA gal said it is. And now I got to apply for some dadgum permit.
You know, Cecil, Henry Oldfield did some work on that place of his over there under some kind of exemption from the law. That might work for you. You might check that out.
Exemption, huh?
Uh-huh.
Maybe I will.
Yeah, that'd be the smart thing to do.
Mr. Mays is here to see you.
Send him on back. Oh, it's good to see you.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Have a seat.
Well, I went to see EPA, and I don't really understand it, but they said that really is a wetland, and I need to come back and talk to you.
Well, that's too bad, but once they do determine a wetland, there's no choice, but you're going to have a permit if you want to clear and level that land.
Well, how do I get this permit?
It's really no problem. Let me show you over here. You see, we're operating under these different laws here. Here, take this book. It's all explained in here. You read through here and you won't have any problem. It's all right in there. You just take that home, fill out those forms, and you bring it back when you get it done.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Baird. Thank you a lot.
All right.
By the way, Mr. Baird, I heard that there might be a exemption or a waiver from the federal law concerning this. Is there any chance that I could get that?
I hadn't thought about that. You just may qualify for the 404F1A agricultural exemption.
Thank you very much.
But, you remember what I told you about the civility opinion over there in your field the other day? That also applies to exemptions. So you're going to have to go check with EPA on whether or not you're really exempt or not. Go check that out with EPA.
All right, thank you.
Tell me, Mr. Mays, will the flow of circulation of waters of the U.S. be impaired or the reach reduced by your project?
Flow or circulation? I told you my daddy drained that area in 1950, and there ain't no water to circulate now.
Now, Mr. Mays, I thought you understood your property is the water of the U.S. Tell me this, do you plan to change the use of the wetland?
Change the use? Of course I'm going to change the use. I don't know anybody at all that can grow soybeans in the woods.
Well, there you have it. The exemption doesn't apply and you're going to need a permit. Here, let me show you.
You know, that's too bad that the EPA wouldn't let you use the agricultural exemption. I kind of thought you might qualify for it. That's too bad. Now, let me look at your application here a minute. Wait a minute, you haven't covered about alternatives. I have to know what alternative you've considered.
What kind of alternatives? You know, I'm farming all of the productive land I have except for that 40-acre tract.
Oh, well, I guess I'm sorry I didn't explain that to you. Under EPA's 4.4b1 guidelines, you've got to consider practical alternatives for a non-water dependent activity. Let me show you that on a little sketch. I think you'll see it clearly when I do that. Chuck, could you help me with this? Chuck, give me a hand with this, would you?
Sure.
I don't think you're having trouble understanding what I was trying to say now that you see how the flow works there. You got to consider these alternatives here, and if you don't,
See, Mr. Mays, the court has got to consider alternatives. Tell me, what alternatives have you considered?
I don't have any other alternatives. I'm farming all of the land except this piece, and where my house and barn sit.
Now, Mr. Mays, we're not unreasonable. The house is out of the question. It's just not practicable. The barn, on the other hand, do you really need that? No. We couldn't consider that either. Isn't there any other land around that's available that you could use that's not wetland?
Well, my neighbors up on the hill farm all of their land. I guess my granddaddy should have bought one of those farms when he was starting out. But I couldn't afford one of those today, even if one was for sale.
But there was land available when your grandfather entered the farm market?
Market? We didn't start the farmer's market until about 1945, and my grandpa died in 1938.
No, Mr. Mays. I mean, when your grandfather began farming. There was no land available when your grandfather began farming?
Hell, I just don't know. You know, he started out in 1908. And there might have been some other farms available then. But I wasn't born until 1928. Hell, I don't know.
Now, Mr. Mays, that tone of voice is not going to help. Look, all you've got to do is demonstrate to the court there were no practicable alternatives available from the time your grandfather entered the farm market until now, and that your project will not have a significant adverse effect after all impacts have been mitigated. And then you should be able to get your permit. The court will be able to find you in compliance.
What do you mean I've got to litigate? You mean I've got to hire a lawyer and sue somebody?
No, Mr. Mays. Mitigate. You know, first you've got to avoid everything, then you've got to minimize what you can't avoid, and then you compensate for that you haven't been able to minimize or avoid. By this we mean that you simply create wetland where you filled it in. Now we have a certain policy. We like to see no net loss of wetland for unavoidable impacts. For public projects we usually require that they create twice as much wetland as they impact. For unauthorized projects, same thing, 2 to 1. For others like yourself, we probably require 4 acres of wetland for each acre impacted. So in your case it would be 160 acres. You'd have to create 160 acres of wetland. So, you see, Mr. Mays, I just really suggest that you go back to the Corps and apply for a permit, and things will be okay. You'll see. They should be able to find you with compliance. You just go see that same fellow you've been talking to, and this time tell him you want to submit an application. And we'll be in touch with you. Don't worry. We'll be very interested in your project. Bye now. Good luck. Ooh. Snowball's chance in hell.
We've summarized all the comments we've received, and we've made an analysis of all the evaluation factors, and we've summarized that here in the statement of findings on your application.
You mean I can have my permit now?
Not exactly. Even though we found that it complies with the 44B1 guidelines and it's not contrary to the public interest, EPA has asked the Assistant Secretary of the Army to elevate your case to higher authority.
You mean this assistant Army fella is going to pray to the good Lord to decide what to do about my farm?
No, not that higher authority. Here, let me explain this memorandum of agreement that we have with EPA under Section 404Q. When we put out a public notice, first we've got to notify EPA of our intent to issue the permit. Now, if they object to that, they're able to have a meeting with the district engineer. If they still want to issue the permit, then we have to give them a second notice of intent to issue. If we still want to issue the permit after that has occurred, then they meet with the division engineer. They have 14 days to request the meeting and 7 days to hold the meeting. If we still decide to issue, we have to serve a third notice of intent to issue. EPA then has 20 days to ask the Assistant Secretary of the Army to elevate the case. The Assistant Secretary of the Army has 15 days to decide. If the permit is elevated, the fourth notice of intent to issue has to be made within 4 months of the district engineer's third notice of intent to issue. So I think you understand it now. We'll just wait for that process to run out. It's no problem. Everything's going to work out fine, Mr. Mays. Have a good day.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Mays.
Yes.
This is Ernie Baird with the Corps of Engineers.
Hello, Ernie.
The Assistant Secretary of the Army decided not to elevate your permit case. Of course, there's one hitch now. EPA has decided to invoke Section 404C veto procedure, so we're unable to issue your permit until after their decision.
What? When will that be?
Sorry, I can't really tell you. You'll have to check with EPA. You have a good day now. Bye.
Wow, baby.
Howdy, Cecil.
Hey, George.
Got your mail here.
Come on up and set a spell.
Hey, you got something here from the United States Environmental Protection Agency.
Well, I wonder what they want from me now. Don't they know that I don't have any more blood to give them? Well, can you beat that, George? EPA has decided not to stop my permit. Isn't that wonderful?
That really is. Cecil, I told you that was a smart thing to do.
Hey, Henry, I got my permit. I can plant that back 40 now. Henry, what in the world's the matter with you? You look like you've lost your best dog.
Cecil, George, I've been down talking to Soil Conservation Service. No, Jake down there tells me that now, after I went and got that exemption like George said I should, after I made those improvements to my property and all, that I'm no longer eligible for my subsidies. Something about some swamp buster bill, George.
Gosh, Henry, that's awful. That's really awful. But Cecil, what you ought to do though, you better go down and talk to the Soil Conservation Service and see how that's going to affect that lower 40 of yours.
You think I ought to talk to Jake, eh,
Well, I
George?
think that'd be the smart thing to do.
I'll tell you what would be the smart thing to do, George. The smart thing to do would be for you to get the hell off of here.
But Cecil,
After you want to call the coroner, George? Call the coroner? Yeah. Like the law, George? George? I'll tell you.